This is Indonesia, one of the most beautiful and most complicated countries on Earth. A land of fiery volcanoes, lush green forests, and tropical beaches. A place where more than 270 million people live across more than 17,000 islands. Yes, 17,000 islands. Indonesia is the world's largest island nation, stretching over 5,000 kilometers. It crosses 3 different time zones, from the tip of Sumatra in the west to the distant edges of Papua in the east. It's the 4th most populated country in the world, the largest Muslim-majority nation, and one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse places on Earth. But behind all this beauty is a mystery. How did a country like this even come to exist? Who ruled these islands before it became one nation? How did it end up with so many islands, each so different from the next? And most importantly, how do you even govern a country that's scattered across oceans? To understand the full story of Indonesia, from ancient kingdoms to colonial rulers, you have to look beyond the map, because this is more than just a nation. It's one of the most unlikely experiments in modern history, an experiment in holding together a country made of thousands of islands, hundreds of cultures, and dozens of active volcanoes. And if you stick with us till the end, you'll find out how Indonesia survives, and why it could easily fall apart. Before it was called Indonesia, this land was home to powerful kingdoms, some of the richest and most advanced in all of Asia. Thousands of years ago, people were already living on these islands, building communities near rivers, farming rice and sailing across the seas. The islands were located between India and China, 2 ancient and powerful civilizations, so traders from both sides kept traveling through them, bringing goods, gold, ideas and religions along with them. These islands became so important that big empires rose here. One of the first was the Srivijaya Kingdom in Sumatra. Around the 7th century, it became a powerful trading centre, controlling sea routes and collecting taxes from ships. It was also a hub for Buddhism and attracted scholars from all over Asia. Later, the Majapahit Empire rose in Java during the 13th and 14th centuries. It was like Indonesia's version of an empire, ruling many islands. Majapahit was known for its art, buildings, and good system of government. It followed Hinduism and was one of the strongest empires in Southeast Asia. But no empire lasts forever. As trade increased and new powers appeared, these kingdoms grew weaker. Local leaders started fighting each other, and new religions came in, especially Islam. Around the 13th century, Islam spread peacefully through trade, especially along the coasts. Slowly, many islanders converted, and Islam became a major part of the region's identity. But just as things were settling down again, something big was about to happen from the outside world, something that would change everything. Foreign ships were on their way, and they weren't coming to trade, they were coming to rule. In the early 1500s, strange ships started showing up near the islands. They came from faraway places, full of men who spoke different languages, carried new flags, and had powerful weapons. The first to arrive were the Portuguese. They were searching for something very valuable. They were searching for spices. At that time, spices like cloves, nutmeg, and pepper were as valuable as gold in Europe. And Indonesia, especially the Maluku Islands, had plenty of them. These islands became famous as the Spice Islands, and everyone wanted control over them. Not long after the Portuguese, the Dutch showed up, but they didn't just want to trade, they came to take over and rule. In 1602, the Dutch created the Dutch East India Company, one of the world's first and biggest international companies. Its main goal was to control the spice trade, no matter what it took. They built forts, made deals with local rulers, and when that didn't work, they used violence. Slowly, the Dutch pushed out the Portuguese and took over the islands. Local kingdoms were defeated or forced to follow Dutch orders, but the Dutch didn't stop at spices. They wanted the land, the people, and all the resources. This started more than 300 years of Dutch rule. Indonesia lost its freedom and became a colony called the Dutch East Indies. The Dutch built cities like Batavia, which is now called Jakarta, and started huge farms for sugar, coffee, and tobacco, and forced Indonesians to work in very hard conditions. They took land, collected heavy taxes, and crushed any protests with violence. Still, many Indonesians never gave up hope. They kept dreaming of freedom. In the 1900s, that dream turned into a real movement. Because just when the Dutch thought they were in full control, a new storm was coming, a world war that would shake the whole world and bring down old empires. It was the 1940s and World War II had started. A new foreign power, Japan, was moving toward Indonesia. In 1942, Japan invaded and quickly took over the islands. The Dutch were kicked out, and after 300 years, Indonesians were now under Japanese control. At first, many Indonesians thought this might be good. Japan said they were there to free Asians from European rule, but that promise didn't last long. Soon, life under Japan became very hard. People were forced to work, food became scarce, and violence violence increased, but something unexpected happened. Indonesians started to dream of real freedom. Japan trained local Indonesians to help in the war, and that military training later helped Indonesians fight for their own country. Then, in 1945, everything changed. After the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrendered. As Japanese forces began to leave, Indonesian leaders saw an opportunity. On August 17, 1945, just 2 days after Japan's surrender, Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta, two Indonesian independence movement leaders, declared Indonesia's independence. It was a brave move, but the Dutch didn't accept it. They returned and tried to take control again. This led to 4 years of fighting, known as the Indonesian National Revolution. Indonesians battled hard, with weapons and through diplomacy, refusing to be colonized again. Finally, in 1949, the Dutch gave up after facing global pressure. Indonesia was free. After centuries of foreign rule, Indonesians were now in charge of their own country. But gaining independence was just the start. Now they had to unite and run a nation with over 17,000 islands, many ethnic groups, and dozens of languages. Indonesia had won its freedom, but now it had to do something arguably even harder: stay together. This wasn't just one country with a few provinces. Indonesia is a giant puzzle of over 17,000 islands, spread out across more than 5,000 kilometers. Some of Indonesia's islands are big and full of people, like Java, which alone has over half of the country's 270 million population. Others like Sumatra, Sulawesi, and Kalimantan are also large, each with their own unique cultures. Then there are thousands of smaller islands, each with different traditions, languages, and identities. To understand just how diverse Indonesia is, people speak over 700 different languages. There are more than 1,300 ethnic groups. Religions include Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, and old local beliefs. So how do you unite a country this diverse? Indonesia's early leaders came up with a strong idea. They created a national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. It simply meant, we're all different, but we're one nation. They also chose a national language carefully. Instead of picking Javanese, the most spoken language, they picked Bahasa Indonesia, a version of Malay that was used in trade and easy to understand. This way, no group felt more important than the others. They made Jakarta the capital and started building roads, schools, and ports across the islands to bring people together. But even with all this, unity wasn't easy. Some regions wanted to break away. The island of Aceh in Sumatra tried to become independent. Papua has long demanded freedom, and East Timor fought a war to separate, finally becoming its own country in 2002. Indonesia has worked for decades to stay united, and even though it has done well in many ways, the struggle continues. Running a country of 17,000 islands is like trying to guide many boats through a storm, each one going its own way. It takes constant effort and care, and once again, geography is both the challenge and the solution. Indonesia doesn't just face political challenges, it also sits in one of the most dangerous geological zones on Earth. It lies right on top of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a massive belt of volcanoes and earthquake zones that circles the Pacific Ocean. This means that Indonesia has more than 130 active volcanoes, more than any other country in the world. It's also one of the most earthquake-prone places on the planet. Tsunamis, floods, and landslides are a regular threat to millions of people. Some of the world's deadliest natural disasters have happened here. In 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa exploded with a force so massive it was heard 4,800 kilometers away. The eruption caused tsunamis that killed over 36,000 people and wiped out entire coastal towns. In 2004, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra, triggering a tsunami that killed over 230,000 people across Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and other countries. It remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history, but it doesn't stop there. Every year, floods displace thousands of people. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is slowly sinking. This is happening because people are using too much groundwater, and sea levels are rising due to climate change. In some places, the city sinks up to 25 centimeters every year. To fix this, the government has decided to build a new capital city called Nusantara on the island of Borneo. This is to reduce the load on crowded, sinking Jakarta. But building a new capital in a rainforest isn't easy. It costs a lot of money and also raises concerns about the environment and the people who already live there. So nature in Indonesia is a double-edged sword. The same volcanoes that make the soil rich for farming can also erupt without warning. The same seas that connect the islands can also bring deadly waves. The same tropical climate that grows lush forests can also flood entire towns. For Indonesia, surviving nature is part of the national identity, and when geography is this wild and unpredictable, governing becomes even harder. When you're governing a country like Indonesia, spread across 17,000 islands, just getting from one place to another is a challenge in itself. In most countries, building roads, highways, or railways connects cities and villages. But in Indonesia, the ocean is always in the way. You can't just build a highway from one province to another, because those provinces are often separated by hundreds of kilometers of water. And even on the same island, the terrain doesn't make it easy. For example, Papua is full of thick forests and tall mountains. Some villages can only be reached by small airplanes or by walking for hours through tough paths. Many places don't have any roads at all. Even Java, the most crowded island in Indonesia, has such bad traffic that traveling just 100 kilometers can take up to 8 hours by car. And then there's the challenge of communication. Many remote islands have limited internet and poor mobile networks. That makes running government services like education and healthcare even harder. In some islands, doctors arrive by boat once a month, and children attend schools with no electricity. For example, only about 73% of Indonesia's population has reliable internet access. That means tens of millions of people still live in digital darkness. This gap between urban and rural areas creates a serious development imbalance. Cities like Jakarta, Surabaya, or Medan are well connected and modern, but islands like Nias, Flores, or Buru often feel like they've been forgotten by the central government. The Indonesian government has tried to fix this. It launched massive projects to build ports, airports, and highways across remote regions. It invested billions in digital infrastructure to bring the internet to all corners of the archipelago. But building and maintaining all this across so many islands takes time, money, and political will. That's why even basic services like getting an ID card, registering a business, or getting emergency help can be painfully slow if you live on a small remote island. So when people say Indonesia is hard to govern, this is what they mean. It's not just about politics, it's about how geography breaks down access, one island at a time. And to top it off, Indonesia is a country of cultures, languages, and identities, so many that it's almost like a mini version of the world. Indonesia has over 1,300 ethnic groups. The biggest group is the Javanese, making up about 40% of the people. But there are also many others, like the Sundanese, Majoris, Balinese, Batak, Dayak, Bugis, Papuans, and more. Each group has its own culture, music, food, and language. Indonesia officially recognizes more than 700 local languages. That's more than most continents. People in Sulawesi, for example, might speak one language at home, a different one in the market, and another one at school. So how do you bring such a diverse country together? The answer is Bahasa Indonesia. After independence in 1945, Indonesia adopted Bahasa Indonesia as its national language. It was simple, neutral, and easy to learn. Today it's taught in every school, used in the media, and spoken by over 90% of Indonesians as a second language. It's one of the greatest language unification efforts in the world. But even language isn't enough to erase deep differences. In Papua, many locals don't identify with the rest of Indonesia. They look different, speak different languages, and have long felt ignored by the central government. Separatist movements have been active for decades, and violence still flares up from time to time. In Aceh, a province in northern Sumatra, people fought for independence for years, and even have the right today to enforce Sharia law under a special autonomy agreement. And during the 1990s and early 2000s, there were sectarian conflicts in places like Maluku and central Sulawesi, where Christian and Muslim communities clashed violently. To help with this, the government often promotes Pancasila, a national philosophy based on 5 principles like belief in God, social justice, and unity. It's taught in schools and referenced in politics. So now we understand why Indonesia is not just a country, it's a floating puzzle of 17,000 pieces. It's a land of volcanoes and rainforests, of rich spices and deep scars from colonization, of powerful kingdoms and painful divisions. From the Hindu temples of Bali to the mosques of Java, from the dense jungles of Papua to the beaches of Sumatra, Indonesia is a world stitched together by history, geography, and sheer will. But Indonesia's biggest challenge might still lie ahead. With rising sea levels, sinking cities, and increasing pressure from China in nearby waters, the future won't be easy, and perhaps begin a new chapter. So yes, Indonesia is hard to govern because it was never meant to be easy. Bringing together thousands of islands, hundreds of cultures, and dozens of faiths into one country takes more than politics. It takes vision, unity, and the belief that even the most complex nations can rise as one. And that's what makes Indonesia so unique and most fascinating countries in the world. Do like and share this video. We will be back soon with another interesting topic. Take care.